Hello and welcome to Shannon Gardens. Thank you guys so much for joining me. So in this week's video, I wanted to take you guys with me around the garden and share what's currently blooming here in mid-October, and also give you guys an idea of some of my longer blooming perennials and annuals in case that's something you'd like to check out for your area and your garden as well. I know I like to get the most value for my money, and so when I'm adding plants to the garden, I really try to look out for those long blooming plants that's really going to give me color all season and into fall. So I'll share that with you guys, as well as some information about the plants, and then also a little bit of preparation that I'm doing. We're actually having an early potential freeze, which this is quite early for us. I'm not prepared. So I'm going to tell you guys what I'm going to do to prepare kind of in the interim, and then what I intend to do with hopefully overwintering at least a couple of my plants. All right, you guys, so with that, let's get to it. So I thought that we would start with the Morning Glory vine, which is still blooming. And you can see it's got the purple flowers here. Now, if you guys watched, I did a video probably about a month or so ago about Morning Glories. And this particular vine is one that I left to reseed and just come up, and I didn't pull it up or anything. I just let it grow. And as it's been blooming this summer, and even when I recorded, it only had the purple blooms. Then within the last week or so, I've started seeing some pink blooms just out of nowhere. This entire time it's been purple blooms, but now I am starting to see the pink blooms as well. I've got this one that's probably going to open tomorrow, I would bet. But this is still going strong and looks so pretty, and I'm so glad to see it still blooming here in mid-October. Now, unfortunately, this plant is not a perennial in my area. It is an annual. This is the Royal Cape Plumbago. And this is one that I'm actually going to try to overwinter this year. So I do need to protect it since we do have the potential for freezing temperatures. And I'll probably bring it in the garage or maybe cover it with a frost blanket. But it is one that I am going to try to overwinter. I would say this is probably my most expensive annual that I get every year. But I absolutely love it. It is very easy to take care of and attracts hummingbirds and butterflies. And I just think that the bluish purple color is beautiful. Let me get an up close view there. I absolutely love it. So this is one that is still blooming and going strong. I deadheaded it probably, I would say, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it has just come back blooming, has lots of buds on it. However, I don't want the freezing temperatures to take it out, so I will be pulling this in the garage, I think, at least for the night. All right, next up we have the purple and white Capitan Dianthus, which is still going strong, even though it is kind of stuck in a small pot. I should have moved it out of here, to be honest with you guys, and intend to do that this fall, but it's still blooming. I just deadheaded it not too long ago, and you can see that it's got buds coming in behind the flowers here. So it's going to continue blooming here, I believe, for a while, and it smells absolutely delightful. So even though it has been stuck in a pot that's a bit too small for it, it's continuing to perform and looks really, really nice and healthy. Here we have Salvia, and specifically this one is Vibe Ignition Fuchsia Salvia, and I have this one in a container. Now, as you can see, it's still blooming. It's got lots of buds here. The hummingbirds absolutely love salvia, and therefore I do too. I've been collecting it for a while, and if you guys have been watching the channel for a while, then you've definitely seen salvia appear several times in my videos. Now, this particular salvia is a smaller growing one that reaches 18 to 24 inches tall and wide. It blooms spring to fall in USDA zones 7 through 11. And as I mentioned, it is just so easy to care for. And it is noted as one of the most humidity tolerant varieties of its type. And that works just great for me. I am in Georgia in zone 7B, 8A, and it is quite humid here. So this is a great plant and one I definitely wanted to show you. And I'll be touching on the other salvias that I have in the garden as well. All right, so next up we have the Salvia Black and Blue. This is actually from an original plant that I divided. I have divided this so many times and put it across my garden. It absolutely does wonderfully. It has a very long bloom time. It starts blooming in late spring, early summer for me, and is continuing to bloom profusely into mid-October. The hummingbirds absolutely love this plant, and look at that deep purple color. It is beautiful and so very, very easy to divide and take care of. And just to give you guys an idea, this is another area where I've divided the black and blue salvia that I was referring to. And I've also divided it here as well. I've got a couple more spots throughout the garden. So this is really one that has provided quite a bit for the money, and I've been able to divide it over and over again. So it's really been a wonderful addition to have in the garden. All right, so I'm going to stay in the salvia family, and here I've got another salvia. Unfortunately, I do not know the type. This is one that I've had for years and years, but again, the same type of thing as with the other two salvia that I just showed you guys earlier. It's a perennial. I've had it for absolutely years. It blooms continuously through the summer and into the fall and attracts hummingbirds and is just very, very easy to maintain. And look at that vibrant color. You can see why it attracts the hummingbirds with that vibrant red color that they love so much. My butterfly bushes are still continuing to bloom, which is great because I still have butterflies that are coming through the area. So I've got a lot of spent blooms on this. I don't deadhead this very much. It's just too big of a plant, to be honest with you. I have a dwarf size one that was easier to deadhead if I wanted to do that, but I don't do it on this one. But you can see that it's just got lots of blooms here. And I'll show you guys a view kind of through. You can see all that purple. And that is still blooming and going strong here in mid-October. And then we have the dwarf butterfly bushes as well. Again, it's so nice to have something for the butterflies that pass through a little later in the year. And the butterfly bushes are definitely a long-lasting bloomer that perform through the summer and into fall. Apricot. Now here's the apricot drift roses. These drift roses are just so easy to care for, in my opinion. I really love having roses, but don't always have the time to struggle with your standard roses and the upkeep of them. So these I found are just a happy medium where you don't have to do a lot with them, and they give continuous blooms throughout the summer. So we've got several clusters here in mid-October, and they're just very happy right now and blooming profusely. I've got another cluster here that I'll show you guys, and just look at that color. It's absolutely gorgeous. Now these are for zones 4 through 11, and they grow low, so it's 1.5 feet in height and 2.5 feet in width. They're known for their excellent disease resistance, and they bloom spring through frost and are drought tolerant. There's also the red drift rose. Again, I just love these drift roses. They are so much easier to care for than your standard rose. So you kind of get that standard rose look, at least to a degree, without all that maintenance. Now this has a tiny bloom. I don't know if you guys can tell here, but these are smaller blooms than the apricot drift rose, but they grow about the same, growing to about 1.5 feet tall and 2.5 feet wide, and they just continue to bloom throughout the summer. So these have absolutely been delightful to have in the garden, and they are recommended for USDA zones 4 through 11. My Shasta Daisy is still blooming. This is one bloom, so I have one bloom left. I'm not sure if it's going to bloom anymore after this, but I did want to share that I do have the one here. The pink skullcap is still blooming. Now this blooms late spring to early fall, and it grows about 12 to 18 inches tall and 24 to 36 wide. So it's a low growing plant, and it's got these tiny little blooms on it. This is so small, but they are really, really great. This is the first year that I've had these, and they have been very easy to take care of. I haven't had to do anything to them, and they've just bloomed all summer. Now this is a plant that I just went through and deadheaded. This is my Speedwell, and this is one that I've had for a couple of years now, and it remained evergreen for me last year through the winter, but I just deadheaded it, so it doesn't really have a lot of blooms right now, but here's one. And then you can see I've got a couple coming in here after my deadheading. Oh, here's the tiny one there. You can see that one coming up as well. Now this did remain evergreen last year, which is great. I don't know if it'll do that every year, but it did last year. It's marked as deer resistant and attracts hummingbirds. So it's just been a great plant to have, so much so that I added a couple more to the garden this year. The Jolt cherry Dianthus is still blooming as well. This one I planted, I believe, in spring, and it's bloomed all summer through the fall. Now, it definitely doesn't have as many blooms as it did in the springtime, but it is still blooming here. This one is non-hardy in zones 1 through 6, and it is set to get to an average height of 20 inches and an average width of 14 inches. This is noted as the most heat-tolerant Dianthus, which is why I planted it, and it's worked out quite well for me in my garden this year. Right, so I know that this one isn't blooming, but I just had to share an update with you guys on the Jazz Hands Variegated Chinese Fringe Flower, or Loropetalum, and look at how beautiful these leaves are. I just wanted to give you guys an update. This plant is doing wonderfully. I've got it planted in a pot here, and it has just done so well. I cannot wait to show you guys an update in the spring when it's blooming. But I just had to show you how beautiful those leaves are. I am so pleased with this plant and just think it looks absolutely beautiful as it's established itself in the container. And I'll put a link to the Loropetalum video that I did in the description if you care to learn more about this plant or the other varieties of Loropetalum that I ran across. Here I have annual salvia planted in a container, and I just wanted to show you guys, while it's not blooming as profusely as it was in summer, it still is blooming, and you can see some little blooms starting back here as well. So this is a plant that's still blooming here in mid-October, along with the Pentas that I planted with it, and then the Dwarf Morning Glory, which is right here. So while it doesn't look as full or have as many blooms as it did in the summer, it still is blooming here in mid-October. Now, I don't foresee it really lasting a lot longer than this, but I just wanted to show you guys how it looks and how it's lasted since I planted it in the spring. Now the same goes for this Angelonia here. This is an annual and it's been blooming all summer. I absolutely love this annual. This is actually the first year that I've planted it and I've been so impressed with it. I did a video on it, which I'll link in the description as well if you'd like to learn more. But again, this is one that's bloomed all summer long and is continuing to bloom. It may not have as many blooms, and I just deadheaded it again about a week ago. I kind of went through and deadheaded a lot of my plants. But it is still blooming, and I wanted to share with you guys that it has lasted through the summer and now here into fall. Here I have annual Pentas in a container, and these just look so happy, to be honest with you. They've got so many buds still. You can see I've got some lantana that's about to bloom there. These are absolutely just a go-to annual for me. They are so easy to maintain, and the hummingbirds and butterflies and bees love the Pentas. I'll put a link in the description for my top 5 annuals if you'd like to learn more about Pentas or the other annuals that I just continually go to when I plant every year. But this is another one for me, and you can just see that it is very happy and continuing to bloom here in mid-October. Now my Mexican petunias are still blooming. They're actually rather thick here. They really need to be thinned out for next year, but I did want to show you guys that they are still blooming. Generally, these will tend to bloom through the beginning of November, maybe mid-November, but with this earlier frost coming through, it may be that they actually die back a little earlier. Now, while this isn't blooming right now, this is so delightful that I just had to share it with you guys. It's lamb's ear, and it absolutely feels wonderful. It's got the greenish silver leaves, and they're just so soft. I love lamb's ear. It's done very, very well, and it blooms in early summer. So this is doing nicely and has filled in nicely this year. And I just kind of wanted to show it to you guys. I think it's so pretty to add to the garden. And if you're more of a tactile person like I am, it's just nice to have something that gives a bit of a different texture in the garden as well. Now these are recommended for full sun. They are drought tolerant. They are deer resistant, and they require very little maintenance. It grows 12 to 18 inches tall and is recommended to space 18 to 24 inches apart in zones 3 through 8. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm so excited to share my long blooming annuals and perennials that are still blooming in the garden now with you guys. And if you guys have any annuals or perennials that I didn't touch on in today's video, please drop me a line in the comments. I would love to hear from you and hear what works best in your garden as well. All right, thank you guys so much again. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so that you can be notified each time I upload a new video. All right, you guys, until next time, happy gardening and goodbye.